The wind came first. It swept across the lonely stretch of high desert, dragging with it the scent of mesquite smoke and distant rain. In that wind walked a man named Elias Boone, a farmer whose quiet life was measured by the rhythm of corn rows and the creak of his gate. He had never traveled farther than the bend of the river that marked his land. From Apache territory, his hands were calloused from years of labor, his eyes pale and uncertain, his speech slow. People in the nearby settlement called him the shy farmer, and he never argued with the name. He preferred quiet. Quiet never hurt him. That evening, as the sun folded behind the buttes, Elias hitched his mule and headed toward the stream. The earth was thirsty, cracked open like old pottery, and the fields begged for water. When he reached the edge of his land, he noticed smoke rising from the other side, smoke from an Apache camp. Though he hadn't seen one there in years, the peace between settlers and the Apache had been fragile, sealed more by exhaustion than trust. Most of the tribes had moved south or west. Elias crouched near the reeds. The sound of cicadas thickened the dusk. He saw her then. A woman tall and proud, her hair black as wet stone, stood at the water's edge. She was washing something, a blanket dyed red with clay and the setting sun lit her skin in a copper glow. She moved with certainty, as though the land itself obeyed her steps. Elias knew he should turn away, but he couldn't. The wind stilled when she looked up, her eyes sharp and knowing. For a long moment, neither moved. Then she spoke, her voice steady as earth. "You watch like a hawk but hide like a rabbit." Elias stumbled back, muttering an apology. "Didn't mean no harm," he said. "Just tendin' to my field." "You tend too close to my water," she replied. "The stream remembers who it belonged to." There was no anger in her tone, only statement, like the way the desert announces its storms. She finished wringing the blanket and laid it on a rock. "You have good land," she added, glancing at his side of the river. "Land that breathes when rain comes. You must listen well to it." He nodded awkwardly. "I try." She studied him for a moment more, then turned to leave. "It remembers who walks." Gently, her words followed him home like the scent of sage after rain. That night Elias couldn't sleep. The wind rattled the windows, carrying echoes of her voice. He thought about her face, strong, unafraid, and wondered why her presence had unsettled him so deeply. He'd met Apache traders before, spoken to a few with cautious politeness, but this woman was different. There was purpose in her gaze, as if she had already measured the size of his soul and found something worth noting. Days passed. The stream kept drawing him back. He told himself it was for the crops, for the irrigation trench that always needed clearing, but he knew better. She was there often, gathering herbs, painting symbols on leather, or sitting still as stone, listening to the earth. Once, when she caught him watching again, she smiled slightly. "You're not good at hiding," she teased. He blushed, muttered about weeds, and she laughed, a low, rich sound that stirred the air like the hum of bees. Her name, she later told him, was Taza, meaning the dawn after battle. She belonged to a small group that had returned to live quietly near the hills, tired of running from soldiers and settlers alike. Over weeks, a fragile rhythm grew between them. He brought her cornmeal once, left it by the river. She left him a small pouch of herbs, said to keep sickness away. He mended one of her clay pots with pitch. She showed him how to find sweet water by reading the color of the grass. Neither spoke of friendship, yet it grew in the silence they shared. The land seemed to approve, softening the drought with brief, gentle rains. Then came the night of the storm. A thunderhead rose from the south, heavy and furious. Elias barely made it to his barn before lightning split the sky. Without thinking, he ran toward it. Near the stream, he found Taza on the ground, clutching her side. A fallen branch had struck her when she tried to secure her horses. He carried her to his cabin through the deluge, his heart hammering louder than the thunder. She watched him through the pain, eyes steady. "You fear your own kindness," she whispered. He tried to protest, but her words stilled him. When she finally slept, he sat by the fire, drenched and trembling, unsure if from cold or the nearness of something he did not yet understand. When dawn came, the storm had cleared. The desert shone clean and new. Taza woke weak but smiling. "You have a gentle heart, farmer," she said. She reached out and took his hand. Do not be ashamed of softness. The wind bends the grass, but it never breaks it. Outside, the world glittered with light. Elias felt, for the first time in years, that his small life might be part of something vast, but he didn't yet know the depth of the path she would lead him down, or the words she would soon speak that would shatter and rebuild his quiet heart. The days after the storm felt different. The air was clearer, the soil softer beneath Elias's boots. Taza stayed in his cabin for nearly a week while her wound healed. She refused to rest, much insisted on helping him grind corn, feed the mule, and mend a torn fence, but each time she moved, pain creased her brow. Elias had never shared his small space with anyone before. Her presence filled the cabin like sunlight through an old window, warm, uninvited, yet impossible to turn away. He found himself watching the way she braided her hair in the mornings, the rhythm of her hands quick and sure. He noticed how she hummed to the fire before cooking, as if the flame were a living thing that needed song to stay bright. There were moments when she caught him staring, and she would meet his gaze without shame or mockery. It made his heart stumble every time. On the fourth evening, when the last of the storm clouds faded, she sat outside on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the horizon. Elias joined her quietly. The world smelled of wet sage and clay. "Your land listens to you," she said softly. "It grows what you ask." "I don't ask for much," he replied. "Just enough to live. That is what I mean." She turned to him. "Men who want too much tear the earth apart. But you wait for her to speak." He tried to smile, unsure what to say. "And what does she say to you?" Taza's eyes drifted toward the distant hills. "She says the world is hungry for balance, for roots and blood, for new breath." Then she looked at him again, and the intensity of her gaze made his chest tighten. "You think life is only corn and rain, Elias Boone. But life is more than what grows in your hands. Sometimes it is what grows in your heart." He didn't understand her words then. Or perhaps he did, but was afraid to admit it. That night, she sang by the fire. Her voice was low and haunting, the melody circling the rafters like smoke. He didn't understand the language, but he felt its meaning, a song of loss, of exile, of something sacred stolen, but not forgotten. When she finished, he whispered, "It's beautiful." She smiled faintly. "It is for those who remember." After she was strong enough to walk, she insisted on returning to her people. Elias offered to take her on his mule, but she refused. "The land will carry me," she said. Before leaving, she pressed a smooth stone into his hand, painted with a spiral, and to crossing lines. "When the wind changes," she told him, "come to the place where the red rocks touch the river." He watched her go until she disappeared beyond the ridge. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Weeks passed. The crops flourished. The stream ran full, and yet Elias felt restless. Every gust of wind seemed to carry her voice. Every shadow at sunset felt like her shape returning. He began waking before dawn, staring toward the red hills, wondering what it meant when she said, "When the wind changes." Then one evening, the wind truly did change. It blew warm from the south, carrying the scent of wild tobacco and rain. Elias felt something stir inside him, a quiet urgency. Without thinking, he saddled his mule and followed the direction of the wind. The journey took him through canyons he had never dared to cross. The land grew rougher, the colors sharper, burnt orange cliffs and deep green valleys. When night fell, he saw a fire flickering ahead. He dismounted and walked toward it. There she was, Taza, sitting beside the flames, painting marks on a drum. Around her were two elders and a young boy, silent as the stars. When she saw Elias, she rose. "The wind told you to come," she said, as though it had been planned all along. Yes," he said, catching his breath. "I didn't know if I should." "You did right," she said. "You came with open hands." The elders looked at him without speaking, their eyes unreadable. Elias frowned. "Spoke of." Taza's gaze was steady. "I told them of the man who listens to the earth," she said. "The one whose heart is quiet enough to hear what the land asks." Elias felt the weight of their eyes. "And what does the land ask?" he asked carefully. Taza took a deep breath. "For new roots," she said. "For a seed that carries both the old and the new." She stepped closer, the firelight catching the bronze of her skin. "I want a child," she said softly, "one who belongs to both our worlds." A child born from peace, not from war. The air stilled. Elias couldn't speak at first. His throat tightened. You want? Yes, she said, not blinking. I want a child from you, Elias Boone. He looked at her, searching for jest, for madness, for anything that would make the world stop spinning. But she stood firm, her eyes fierce with purpose, her breath calm. I don't understand, he whispered. Why me? Because you are not like the others, she said. You do not take, you give. You plant and wait. You listen. That is what the world needs now. A man who listens. The elders nodded slowly, as though the decision were already sealed. Elias felt the ground tilt beneath him. Now this woman, wild as the wind itself, was asking him to change the shape of that life forever. He looked into her eyes, and for a fleeting moment, he saw something there beyond the words, not desire, but destiny. A promise bound by wind and earth. The silence after her words was heavier than the mountains around them. Elias felt every sound: the crackle of the fire, the rustle of night birds, the distant hiss of wind through the canyon. Taza's eyes didn't waver. She stood rooted to the earth as though her strength came from it. Elias finally found his voice. You don't even know me. I know the way you walk, she said. You walk without crushing the grass. I know the way you speak slow, as if you measure truth before you give it away. I know that when the river swells, you let it run where it must instead of trying to own it. That is knowing enough. He looked down at his calloused hands. A child is. That's a life. You're talking about something that can't be undone. Taza's voice softened. If we keep to ourselves, we vanish. If we join hands with those who still hear the land, maybe the wind will carry our songs again. The elders listened quietly. One spoke in Apache, his tone grave but gentle. Taza translated. He says that when roots intertwine, the tree stands longer against the storm. Elias's heart pounded. He felt the pull of something vast, bigger than himself, older than his farm or his fears. And if I refuse, he asked, then I will still walk my path, Taza answered simply. But the wind will know you turned away from what it offered. Her words stung in a place he hadn't known existed. He turned from the fire, pacing toward the river. The stars above were sharp as eyes, the current below soft as breath. He saw his reflection ripple in the dark water, one man caught between two worlds. He remembered the years of silence after his parents died, the endless seasons of planting and reaping, the empty chair across his small table. He had told himself he was content with quiet, but now he realized he had mistaken emptiness for peace. He turned back. Taza hadn't moved. The boy by the fire had fallen asleep. The elders watched the flames as though reading them. Elias walked closer. If I said yes, what would you expect of me? Only honesty, she said. The child would belong to both of us, but to the earth most of all. You would not be caged by it. You would walk beside us when the land allows, and we would honor you in return. It sounded impossible, and yet something deep in him whispered that impossibility was where truth lived. He took a slow breath. I'm a simple man, Taza. I don't know how to carry two worlds in my hands. You don't have to carry them, she said. Just hold them long enough to see they are not enemies. For a moment, no one spoke. The fire snapped. The stars wheeled above. Then Elias nodded once. If this is truly what you ask, then I will walk with you, wherever it leads. Taza's expression didn't change, but her eyes gleamed with something fierce and tender all at once. She touched his chest lightly, right over his heart. Then the wind has chosen well. The elders murmured blessings in low voices. The canyon seemed to exhale with them. They sat together until dawn, speaking little. Elias spoke of his father, a man who taught him that the soil remembers every kindness. When the first light touched the cliffs, Taza rose. Go back to your fields, she said. There will be a time for everything. When the crows fly low and the air tastes of rain, come to me again. The earth will tell you when. Elias nodded, feeling both weightless and rooted. He mounted his mule and rode toward home as the sun rose behind him. The land seemed changed, more alive, more watchful. For many days he worked his farm with a new rhythm. He found himself speaking softly to the corn, touching the soil with reverence. Each evening he looked to the red hills and wondered if she was watching the same sunset. He told no one in town about her words. Some things weren't meant to be explained. Then one morning, Weeks later, he woke to find the crows circling low above the fields. The air smelled of rain. Without hesitation, he packed a small bundle and followed it. Rain was already whispering against the stones when Elias reached the red hills again. The trail was slick, the sky the color of forged iron. Half familiar, he rode until the mule refused to go farther, then continued on foot, following the smell of smoke and the steady throb of drums in the distance. He found the camp nestled in a shallow valley, between cliffs that glowed like embers in the storm light. When they saw him, some paused, uncertain. A few recognized him from before and simply nodded. She looked stronger, almost luminous. "The wind remembered you," she said. Elias, soaked to the bone, managed a smile. Couldn't ignore it. She led him beneath a canvas shelter. The fire inside hissed and sputtered under the damp air. "The storm brings change," she said. "Everything we asked for rides inside it." Elias removed his hat, watching the drops slide from its brim. "You said the earth would tell me when. I suppose this is her voice." Taza studied him for a long time before speaking. "It is." Then, more softly, "Are you afraid?" He thought about it. "Yes, but maybe fear's the only honest sign. Man's walking into something real." "Then walk with me." They spent the rest of the day preparing. The elders sang low prayers that blended with thunder. The women painted symbols on flat stones. Children carried bowls of rainwater to the center fire pit. Taza moved among them with quiet authority, but of promise. "When the paths cross under storm," she said, "each takes some of the other's light. It's not about one belonging to another. It's about learning to keep walking in the same direction." When the storm broke, full, the entire sky shuddered. The elders beckoned them both to the circle. An elder spoke in Apache, his words rhythmic, measured. Taza translated in whispers. "The land remembers every promise. Let your words fall like rain, soft enough to heal, strong enough to last." Elias closed his eyes, thinking of his fields, the river, the quiet mornings he had lived alone. "And to carry your patience in my heart." When the last syllable left her lips, lightning struck somewhere beyond the hills, illuminating the valley as bright as noon. For a moment, everything stilled. Then the thunder rolled away, and the rain softened to a hush. The ceremony was done. The elders extinguished the fire, letting steam rise into the night. "The world has heard," one said. "Now it will decide what grows." Elias and Taza stepped out into the open. The air was cool, washed clean. Taza tilted her head back to feel the rain on her face. "The first rain after a promise is always the sweetest," she murmured. Elias watched her, struck again by the strange certainty she carried. "What happens now?" "Now," she said, "we wait for the earth to answer." They stayed together through the night, speaking in low voices about dreams and seasons. She told him stories of her people, the stars that were warriors, the rivers that remembered songs. He told her about winters so cold the breath froze on the window glass. Between the stories lay quiet moments where words were unnecessary. The rhythm of rain and heartbeats filled the space. When dawn finally came, the storm had passed. A mist drifted through the canyon, and the desert smelled reborn. Before Elias returned to his farm, Taza placed her hand on his arm. "The world will speak soon," she said. "Whatever it says, remember this night." He nodded. "I will." Hair glinting like black river water, the red cloth bright as flame. The image stayed with him the entire journey home. Back at the farm, everything felt sharper, the soil darker, the air clearer. He planted his next crop under a sky still heavy with the scent of rain. Days turned into weeks. The harvest came early that year, richer than he'd ever seen. The settlers at the trading post asked him how he'd coaxed such bounty from ground that had nearly died. Elias only smiled and said, "Maybe I finally learned to listen." Yet every night he looked toward the red hills, wondering what the wind might bring next. Autumn crept over the desert almost without warning. The mesquite turned brittle, the sky deepened to a bluer blue, and the evenings carried a quiet that felt like held breath. Elias's fields shimmered gold, heavy with grain, every stalk bent under the weight of promise. Yet even in that abundance he felt a restlessness, a sense that something unseen was moving toward him through the wind. One afternoon, while repairing the fence near the river, he saw movement across the water. A group of riders approached three elders and, walking beside them, "Taza," She wore a deerskin cloak and a necklace of carved turquoise. Her step was slower now, deliberate. Elias crossed the river without hesitation. The elders greeted him solemnly, and one spoke in a tone that carried through the still air. "The earth has answered," he said. "The joining you made has taken root." Taza looked at Elias and nodded. "Life has begun to grow inside me." The world seemed to tilt again, as it had that night by the fire. Then he reached for her hands, holding them as though they were the first real thing he had ever touched. "You're certain?" She smiled. The body always knows before the tongue can name it. A rush of emotions, fear, awe, wonder flooded him all at once. "What will happen now?" "The child will be raised among my people," she said. "But he or she will know both sides of the wind, the quiet of the farmer and the strength of the mountain." Elias searched her eyes. "And you? What do you need from me?" "Patience," she said simply, "and faith, the same things that make the corn rise." The elders left them alone by the river. The sun dropped low, staining the cliffs red. Elias sat beside her, listening to the gentle rhythm of water. He had never imagined fatherhood, had never thought of his blood as anything but his own. Now it was part of something larger, a bridge between worlds. How the nearby settlers might react, but beneath every word lay the unspoken truth that their lives had already changed beyond measure. When twilight came, Taza stood. "You must go before darkness. The trail is rough." He rose too, reluctant to let go of the moment. "When will I see you again?" "When the first snow touches the high peaks," she said. "Then you will know it is time." He nodded. "I'll be waiting." As she turned to leave, she placed a hand over his heart. "The wind carries our breath together now. No distance can scatter it." Elias watched her disappear into the fading light. The river between them shimmered like molten copper. He felt no emptiness this time, only the hum of connection, as if the earth itself had whispered yes. That night, he sat on his porch long after the stars had risen. The sky was alive with motion, meteors tracing silver arcs, the Milky Way bright as spilled grain. He thought of Taza somewhere beyond the hills, of the child growing under her heart, and of the strange, wild grace that had entered his quiet life. The wind brushed across his face, warm and steady, carrying a single word that wasn't quite sound. "Listen." Elias smiled, lifted his head to the stars, and whispered back, "I'm listening." The lantern by his door flickered once, caught the breeze, and went out, leaving only the soft rustle of night and the steady heartbeat of the earth.